The 7 things seniors can rely on for happiness, health, and peace. After 70, what if there were 7 things, 7 powerful truths that every person should know before they turn 70? Not advice from doctors, not cliches from books, but real, time-tested pillars that can shape the difference between just surviving and truly living. Because your senior years don't have to be filled with fear, decline, or loneliness. Your senior years can be filled with peace, strength, and steady joy. In today's video, we're going to walk beside you and share each of these pillars, what they are, how they help, and why they matter. But before we begin, we'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and stay with us until the very end, because what you hear today might just change the way you age forever. Number 1. Physical mobility. Have you ever wondered if your independence could truly rest on something as simple as the ability to stand up without help? For many aging adults, that moment comes quietly, the day bending to pick up a dropped spoon feels harder than expected, or when stairs start to seem taller than they used to. These moments are not just physical, they are deeply emotional. Because the ability to move, even in small ways, is not merely about function. It is about freedom, confidence, and above all, safety. Physical mobility is the first and most crucial form of self-reliance, not because it makes life easier, but because it keeps life fuller. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, 1 in 4 Americans over 65 experiences a fall every year, and falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in older adults. Yet, these risks are not inevitable. Studies from the National Institute on Aging show that regular, low-impact movement, such as walking for just 20 minutes a day, can reduce fall risk by up to 40%, while also improving cardiovascular health, joint stability, and even sleep quality. There is a profound psychological shift that happens when someone trusts their body again. After age 70, the fear of dependency becomes louder. It whispers during family visits, echoes in hospital waiting rooms, and lingers after every stumble. But physical strength and balance can help quiet that fear. Because when the body is dependable, the mind becomes braver. Seniors who remain physically mobile report higher levels of confidence, lower levels of anxiety, and a greater willingness to stay socially engaged. Consider the story of Patricia, a 6-year-old former florist from Oregon. After being diagnosed with mild osteoarthritis, she could have chosen to slow down. Instead, she joined a chair yoga group at her community center. What started as twice-weekly sessions turned into a full daily routine of stretching, walking laps around her garden, and practicing balance exercises while brushing her teeth. Patricia hasn't just maintained her strength, she's expanded her world. Last year, she traveled alone to visit her granddaughter in Denver, and walked through the airport without needing a wheelchair for the first time in 5 years. "It's not about being young again," she said. "It's about not being afraid of my own life." This kind of transformation doesn't come from grand resolutions. It starts with micro decisions made in the quiet spaces of daily life. Stretching for 10 minutes while waiting for the coffee to brew, taking an extra trip down the hallway, practicing standing on one foot for 5 seconds at a time near a countertop. Even small additions like using resistance bands or climbing stairs instead of taking the elevator add up to meaningful change over time. In clinical practice, mobility is not treated as a bonus. It is treated as essential preventive medicine. Maintaining the ability to rise from a chair without using one's arms is now considered a major predictor of long-term independence. That single skill tells us more about future health outcomes than any blood test ever could. Why? Because it reflects leg strength, core stability, and balance, 3 things that support not only physical safety, but mental confidence. So, what can be done today? Begin with honest observation. Is there stiffness getting out of bed? Are there hesitations when stepping onto a curb? Do chairs feel lower than they used to? These are not signs of weakness. They are signals, a call to attention, not defeat. Respond gently, but firmly. Create a schedule, even a small one. Commit to movement as a non-negotiable part of daily life. Set a reminder to stand and stretch every hour, to take short walks after meals, or to use a pedometer and count steps. Not to compete, but to stay accountable. Because physical mobility isn't about chasing youth. It's about protecting today. It is the strongest statement of self-care one can make after 70. It says, I am still here, and I still choose to move. That choice, repeated daily, becomes a foundation stronger than any external support. It becomes your quiet power. Number 2. Financial simplicity. What if the true cause of anxiety in older adults wasn't declining health, loneliness, or even the fear of dying, but rather the invisible weight of financial confusion? That is the hypothesis, increasingly supported by geriatric psychologists and public health researchers across the United States. Not knowing exactly what is owed, what is left, or where it all goes each month is a quiet, persistent stressor that drains more energy than most people realize. And unlike other stressors, this one doesn't fade with age. In many cases, it grows. Financial simplicity is not about how much money is in the bank. It is about clarity, control, and confidence. In a recent study conducted by the American Psychological Association, adults over the age of 65 who rated their finances as clear and manageable scored 37% lower on clinical anxiety scales than those with similar income levels but greater financial disorganization. What this means is powerful. Peace of mind comes not from having more, but from managing what one has with purpose. In the lives of seniors, financial clutter doesn't just come from debt or overspending. It comes from too many accounts, forgotten subscriptions, surprise fees, duplicate charges, unread statements, and delayed paperwork. These small things may seem harmless, but over time, they erode the sense of security. And when older adults lose the feeling of financial control, it's not just the budget that suffers, it's their sense of autonomy. Consider the story of Lorraine, a 74-year-old widow in Wisconsin. After her husband passed away, she found herself overwhelmed by the financial chaos he had always managed. 5 checking accounts, 3 credit cards, a dozen recurring subscriptions, stacks of bills, and no clear list of passwords. For months, she avoided opening her mail. She told herself she would get to it soon, but each unopened envelope became a symbol of helplessness. Finally, with the help of a local credit union counselor, she downsized to 1 checking account, canceled all but 1 credit card, made a simple monthly budget, and began using an old-fashioned ledger notebook. Today, she says, I open the mail every morning with my coffee. It's not scary anymore. I know what's in front of me. This kind of transformation does not require wealth or complex planning. It requires attention, honesty, and the willingness to simplify. Start with a single step. Write down all sources of income on one side of a page and all regular expenses on the other. Add a third column for the unnecessary things, the charges that sneak in, the unused subscriptions, the impulse purchases. Seeing it all in one place is often enough to prompt immediate clarity. Then take it further. Close unused accounts. Set up automatic payments for essentials like electricity or insurance. Switch to a single credit card with low fees. Request paper billing if online systems feel overwhelming. Use a notebook to track spending by hand if digital tools feel confusing. These steps are not signs of weakness. They are signs of strength, the quiet, firm kind that says, I am in charge of my life. From a scientific standpoint, simplified finances improve cognitive load. According to a study from Stanford University, reducing the number of financial decisions seniors make each week correlates with improved working memory and reduced cortisol levels, the hormone responsible for stress. In other words, when there are fewer choices to make, the brain functions better, and when the brain is clear, the heart rests easier. There is also emotional weight in managing money with confidence. Older adults who feel financially competent are more likely to engage in social activities, make medical decisions with clarity, and avoid unnecessary dependence on family members. They are also less likely to become targets for financial scams, which sadly exploit vulnerability and confusion. So the question is, what needs to be simplified? Is there a drawer filled with old statements no one wants to touch? Are there charges on the bank statement that don't make sense? Is there a hesitation to check the balance each month out of fear of what might be there? These are not small things. They are red flags waving gently in the quiet of everyday life. Simplifying finances doesn't shrink your world. It expands it. It turns chaos into clarity and fear into confidence. And most importantly, it brings back a daily peace that no number can buy. Because financial simplicity is not about restriction, it's about relief. It's about saying with certainty, I may not have everything, but I know exactly what I have, and that is enough. Number 3. Daily health routine. Two neighbors, both in their late 70s, lived just a few houses apart in a quiet Arizona suburb. One, named Gerald, began each morning with the same routine for the past 15 years. He rose at 6 a.m., made a cup of black coffee, took his medications, walked his dog around the block, stretched by the garden bench, and read the newspaper before breakfast. The other, Thomas, started his days differently. Some mornings he skipped breakfast. Other days he stayed in bed until noon. His medications sat forgotten on the counter, and when asked how he was doing, he often replied, I take it day by day, I guess. When the pandemic hit, both men were forced into extended periods of isolation. Within 6 months, their health began to shift, but in opposite directions. Gerald remained steady, both physically and emotionally. His doctor noted lower blood pressure, stronger legs, and no signs of cognitive decline. Thomas, by contrast, grew more withdrawn. He lost weight, struggled with sleep, and began forgetting small things. Eventually, he was hospitalized for a fall that fractured his hip. This is not a story about luck. It is a story about rhythm. Daily health routines do not prevent every illness or accident, but they build an internal scaffolding, a system of self-care that supports stability, clarity, and strength. According to the Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry, seniors with consistent daily routines report 41% lower stress levels and significantly fewer emergency health incidents than their peers with irregular patterns. These routines are not strict timetables, but predictable rituals, and that predictability brings power. The human nervous system thrives on consistency. Waking, eating, moving, and resting at regular intervals signals to the brain, you are safe. When the body receives care in repeated patterns, it doesn't panic at every minor disruption. Heart rate steadies, digestion improves, cortisol levels drop, and the mind feels more in control. That is what Gerald created, a sense of personal safety rooted in daily acts. His movements were simple, not extreme, but the repetition told his body, I am cared for. Over time, that message reshaped how his body responded to aging. Establishing a health routine isn't about checking boxes. It's about establishing rituals that honor the body. A warm drink in the morning to hydrate, stretching to loosen the spine and shoulders, a short walk to get blood circulating, balanced meals at consistent times, setting a sleep schedule that honors the natural rhythm of light and darkness. These acts, though small in appearance, are mighty in effect. Studies from Johns Hopkins University show that seniors who follow regular routines for eating, sleeping, and moving show improved memory recall, reduced joint pain, and stronger immune function. These are not promises for a perfect life, but they are strong defenses against the wear and tear of aging. The mind, too, needs routine. A moment of stillness in the morning, a phone call to a friend after lunch, 5 minutes of writing or reflection at night. These are not luxuries. They are lifelines. They provide emotional continuity, which is especially vital as external circumstances change. A common misconception is that routines are restrictive. In reality, they are liberating. They remove the mental burden of decision fatigue. No more wondering, should I walk today? You already know the answer, because it's what you do. And with that consistency comes a growing trust in yourself. A feeling of capability that makes everything else easier. If the idea of starting a routine feels overwhelming, begin with just one thing. Pick the same time each day for a short walk. Set a daily alarm for taking your medications. Drink water after every meal. Choose a sleep schedule and honor it. Let that one habit anchor your day. When it feels familiar, add another. Gerald didn't build his rhythm overnight. It started with one morning walk. But over time, his body responded with loyalty. Because when the body is nurtured with care, it shows up stronger, steadier, and more willing to carry you through the years with grace. A daily health routine is not about controlling time. It is about aligning with it. It is a declaration that even in a world that changes constantly, There is one thing that remains steady: you, showing up for yourself, one ritual at a time. Number 4. Emotional resilience. According to the American Psychological Association, resilience is not a trait people either have or do not have. It involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be learned and developed by anyone. For older adults navigating the complexity of later life, this is more than reassurance. It is a call to action. Emotional resilience is not the absence of sadness or the denial of pain. It is the quiet, determined capacity to face hardship without losing the inner thread of hope and self-worth. Aging inevitably brings emotional challenges: the loss of a spouse, the physical distancing of children, the passing of lifelong friends, or the confronting realization that one's body no longer moves as freely as it once did. These are not occasional occurrences. They are steady companions in the later chapters of life. But while these losses are real, they do not have to become defining. Emotional resilience is the skill, and in many ways the discipline, of responding to those changes without shrinking in spirit. Unlike physical strength, which may diminish with time, emotional strength has the potential to grow deeper. This growth begins not with grand gestures, but with simple practices of acknowledgement. Naming the feeling, allowing it to exist, and then moving through it with care. One of the most common misunderstandings about resilience is that it means never breaking down. In truth, it is the ability to break momentarily and return to center with greater clarity. Consider Eileen, a 77-year-old retired nurse from Ohio. After losing her husband of 52 years, she found herself floating through weeks of silence and longing. But each evening, she lit a small candle on her kitchen table, the same place where they once shared meals. She would sit in its light, allow herself to feel everything without judgment, and whisper, "You were loved, and I am still here." That candle became her ritual of resilience, a reminder that sorrow could be held, honored, and survived. Scientific literature supports this quiet wisdom. Studies published in the journals of gerontology show that older adults who engage in emotional processing through journaling, spiritual reflection, or structured support groups demonstrate stronger immune responses, better memory retention, and more stable cardiovascular health than those who suppress their feelings. Emotional expression, when practiced with intention, acts as medicine for both mind and body. Practical steps matter. A simple daily practice of gratitude, writing down 3 good things before bed, has been shown to improve sleep and reduce depressive symptoms by over 25%. Deep breathing exercises, 5 minutes of mindful silence, or gentle music in the evening can serve as emotional reset points throughout the day. These small habits are not for moments of crisis alone. They are how one prepares the mind for all the ordinary and extraordinary demands of aging. Equally important is setting emotional boundaries, saying no when energy is low, allowing grief to linger without explanation, choosing solitude without shame. Emotional resilience includes the power to curate one's emotional world, protecting peace without isolating entirely. It is a skill that becomes especially vital when family dynamics shift, or when the pace of life no longer matches the heart's rhythm. Resilience is not just internal. Connection strengthens it. Weekly conversations with a friend, monthly visits to a support circle, or simply sharing stories with a neighbor over coffee. All these interactions stitch together the social fabric that holds emotional life in place. Loneliness may knock at the door, but connection keeps it from settling in. So consider gently. What feeling has not been given space lately? Is there something unspoken, ungrieved, or uncelebrated that needs your attention? Creating time and rituals for emotional care isn't a luxury in older age, it's a necessity. Not because emotions are fragile, but because they are the very source of strength that allows one to rise each day with grace. In the end, resilience is not a finish line. It is a rhythm, a returning, a way of saying, though I bend, I do not break. Though I feel deeply, I do not drown. And in that truth lies the real beauty of aging, not the absence of difficulty, but the deepening of courage. Number 5. Lifelong learning. Imagine waking up tomorrow to a world where everything familiar has been replaced. The phone interface is new. Conversations revolve around topics you've never heard of. The grocery store uses digital-only checkouts. And suddenly, Even asking for help feels like admitting you've fallen behind. Now imagine instead that in this same world, you've already read a little about the new changes. You've taken a short course. You're not an expert, but you're not lost either. The difference between those two outcomes is not age, it's learning. Lifelong learning is not about going back to school or mastering technology for the sake of appearances. It is about staying mentally adaptable in a world that never stops evolving. More than ever, it is a critical pillar of emotional vitality and cognitive health for older adults. According to the National Institute on Aging, seniors who regularly engage in new learning experiences reduce their risk of dementia by up to 30%. Learning doesn't just stimulate the brain, it gives it a reason to keep building connections, creating meaning, and staying active. Yet, the benefits go far beyond biology. Learning keeps identity intact. In a society that often defines people by their productivity or professional titles, many older adults face an uncomfortable silence when those roles fall away. But when the mind continues to explore, to ask questions, to seek new answers, it reminds the self, I am still becoming. I am still relevant. Consider Charles, a 73-year-old former postal worker from Georgia. After retiring, he struggled with boredom and a creeping sense of invisibility. Then, on a whim, he enrolled in a free online course about World War II military strategy. He found himself looking forward to each module, taking notes, even joining a virtual discussion group. That one course turned into 5. Today, Charles helps moderate a forum for history enthusiasts worldwide. It's not about being busy, he says. It's about being awake again. What makes lifelong learning powerful is its accessibility. It doesn't have to cost anything or follow a curriculum. It could mean reading one article a day on a new topic, watching a documentary with a notebook nearby, trying a recipe from a different culture, downloading a language learning app, learning how to use a new feature on your phone. Even puzzles and word games count, anything that makes the brain stretch, pause, or reflect. The Mayo Clinic confirms that older adults who engage in such mentally stimulating activities not only preserve memory function but also exhibit greater emotional resilience and improved sleep quality. The act of learning gives the day shape and the spirit direction. Equally important is social learning. Joining a community class, a local library book club, or even a knitting circle opens the door to 2 vital ingredients for well-being: cognitive engagement and connection. In these settings, new information flows naturally, and so does conversation. For many, these shared spaces become safe places to rediscover confidence, curiosity, and companionship. Of course, barriers exist. Some feel hesitant around new technology. Others may believe it's too late to learn. But this is where perspective matters. The brain is not a fixed machine. It is remarkably plastic, even into the 80 seconds and beyond. Learning something new later in life is not an act of catching up, it's an act of staying open. And openness is one of the most powerful traits a person can carry into older adulthood. So consider this simple invitation. Pick one thing you don't yet know, but would like to. It doesn't have to be practical. It just has to matter to you. Write it down. Take one small step this week. Search for a book, a free course, a tutorial video, or a person who already knows it. Let the joy of not knowing lead you to the excitement of learning. Because lifelong learning is not about chasing relevance. It's about remaining rooted in the truth that every day offers something new to understand. And in understanding, we come alive not in spite of our age, but because of it. Number 6. Community contribution. More than 90% of American seniors say they want their lives to make a difference after retirement, according to a national survey conducted by AARP. Yet fewer than 30% engage in consistent community activities or service each year. The gap between those two numbers isn't just a statistic, it's a lost opportunity for meaning, for connection, and for legacy. Community contribution is not about volunteering for the sake of being busy. It's about fulfilling a deep, human need to matter. As people move out of their working years and into retirement, the roles that once gave structure to the day begin to fall away. Titles shift, routines dissolve. And if nothing new replaces them, a quiet ache can emerge, a sense of invisibility. But when someone contributes to something larger than themselves, even in the smallest way, that ache turns into energy. Psychological research from Stanford's Center on Longevity shows that older adults who engage in regular acts of giving through time, skills, or simple presence experience 45% higher life satisfaction and significantly lower levels of depression. The act of giving shifts the brain's chemistry. It increases dopamine, reduces cortisol, and activates the same neural pathways that light up when people experience joy or deep connection. In other words, contribution isn't just generous, it's medicinal. Take, for example, Marilyn, a 72-year-old former high school art teacher from Illinois. After her husband passed, she found her days painfully quiet. One afternoon, while dropping off a donation at the local library, she saw a flyer asking for volunteers to help children with reading. That small invitation turned into a 3-year commitment. Twice a week, she now reads stories aloud to second graders. They don't know my past, they just know I show up, she says, and that's enough to make me feel alive again. What makes contribution so powerful is that it doesn't require strength, money, or even mobility. It only requires presence. A warm phone call to someone who lives alone, baking a pie for a neighbor, sewing blankets for a shelter, sharing stories at a community center, mentoring a younger person through life or career questions. These acts are not filler, they are fiber. They stitch meaning back into the fabric of each day. Contribution also offers something precious that is often overlooked in aging: perspective. When older adults help younger generations or support others in need, they're reminded that their decades of experience, patience, and resilience have value. They stop being retired and start being activated. The narrative shifts from decline to contribution. At the biological level, volunteering has even been linked to increased longevity. A study by Carnegie Mellon University found that adults over 65 who volunteered regularly were 40% less likely to develop high blood pressure over a 4-year period. The reason? Social engagement lowers stress and increases the sense of purpose, both strong predictors of cardiovascular health. Yet, contribution doesn't have to come through organizations or formal roles. It can begin right at home. Start by asking, who in your life needs a little encouragement this week? Is there someone who could use your skills, your presence, or simply your attention? Contribution isn't about fixing problems. It's about showing up, again and again, as a reminder that care still exists in this world. The mistake is believing that giving is a one-way street. In truth, every act of giving returns something to the giver: a moment of dignity, a spark of joy, a reminder that life still holds connection and meaning. So the question is simple: what can be offered today? A word? A hand? A moment? Because in giving, we don't just fill someone else's cup, we quietly fill our own. And that fullness is one of the most beautiful rewards aging has to offer. Number 7. Personal code of values. Imagine standing in the middle of a dense forest with no map, no compass, and no trail markers. The trees shift in the wind. The light changes quickly. The sounds around you are unfamiliar. Without something steady to guide the way, every direction feels uncertain. Now imagine holding a small, well-worn compass in your palm, one that doesn't shout, doesn't flash, but always points to what matters most. That compass is your personal code of values. In a world that grows louder, faster, and more unpredictable with each passing year, especially in the later stages of life, a personal code is not just helpful, it is essential. It serves as an internal guide when the external world becomes disorienting. And unlike roles, relationships, or possessions, your values cannot be taken from you. They go wherever you go. They remain when others leave. They lead when everything else is unclear. A personal code doesn't need to be complex or philosophical. In fact, the strongest ones are often the simplest. One man I once knew, Howard, 84 years old, a retired train mechanic from Pennsylvania, kept his values written on a 3x5 index card in his wallet. It said, "Speak the truth. Be kind when possible. Finish what you start. Ask for forgiveness quickly. Sleep with no regret." He didn't show it to many people, but he read it to himself every Sunday night. That quiet ritual, repeated week after week, grounded him more than any sermon or self-help book ever could. From a psychological perspective, maintaining a clear set of personal values improves emotional regulation. reduces decision-making stress, and contributes to a stronger sense of life purpose. A study from the University of Chicago found that seniors who identified a personal value system and reflected on it weekly had lower levels of depression and anxiety, and reported a deeper sense of life satisfaction even when facing health or family-related challenges. Your personal code is the one thing that doesn't age. While the body changes and routines adjust, values often deepen. What you stand for, honesty, integrity, compassion, faith, humility, curiosity, becomes your identity, even after your job title, daily schedule, and relationships shift. And here's the beauty. You don't need anyone else's permission to define it. A personal code doesn't require validation from children, peers, or society. It doesn't need to be posted or declared. It simply needs to be lived, one act of alignment at a time. Returning the grocery cart instead of leaving it in the lot, listening instead of interrupting, giving thanks even when no one's watching. These small decisions accumulate into dignity, not public applause, but private peace. Because living in alignment with your values isn't about appearing good, it's about feeling right, deep within. And that feeling can carry you through grief, loneliness, aging, or even fear. So, what are the values that form your compass? If no one were watching, what kind of person would you still choose to be? What 3 principles would you want written on your heart, if nothing else remained? The process of identifying these doesn't require perfection. It requires reflection, a few quiet minutes, a pen and paper, a willingness to ask, what matters most to me now? What am I unwilling to compromise, even as the world changes? Start by writing them down, then read them aloud. And most importantly, live them through small, daily actions. Because when all else is uncertain, when the roles change, when the house grows quiet, when the body slows down, your values remain. They steady your heart. They bring meaning to ordinary days. And in the end, they allow you to look back, not with regret, but with reverence, knowing that through it all, you stayed true to who you really are. Growing older is often spoken of as a season of loss of youth, roles, relationships, and strength. But what if aging is not about losing, but about uncovering the hidden architecture of a stronger, wiser life? Through these 7 pillars, physical mobility, financial simplicity, daily health routines, emotional resilience, lifelong learning, community contribution, and a personal code of values, we begin to see aging not as decline, but as design. Physical mobility is not about racing, but about freedom. The freedom to rise from a chair without fear, to walk toward the sun in the morning, to say with each step, I still belong to this world. Financial simplicity is not about wealth, but peace. The peace of opening a letter without dread. The peace of knowing what you have and what you truly need. Daily health routines are not restrictions, but rhythms, the quiet beats of a life that feels steady, anchored, and respected. Emotional resilience is not the absence of sorrow, but the courage to hold sorrow without being consumed by it, to light a candle in the dark and whisper, I am still here. No, it's not main silence. Lifelong learning is not about school, but about staying alive inside, finding joy in curiosity, picking up a book, a class, a new skill, and realizing that growth has no expiration date. Contribution is not about charity, but about dignity, the small acts of showing up, baking a pie, reading to a child, or lending an ear that remind us we are still needed, still vital, still part of the human circle. And finally, a personal code of values is not a philosophy on paper, but a compass in the hand. It guides us when everything else changes. It tells us who we are, even when the world forgets. Picture 2 lives. One where each day drifts without direction, and another where each day rests on these 7 supports. The difference is not luck, it is choice. It is the decision to take one walk, to cancel one unused subscription, to light one candle, to learn one new thing, to give one small kindness, to live one value out loud. These choices become the story of aging well. They become the difference between waiting for life to happen and continuing to shape life with purpose. So here's the question that matters. Which of these 7 pillars calls to you most today? Is it your body, your money, your rhythm, your heart, your mind, your community, or your compass? Share your answer in the comments because your story, your decision, might be the spark someone else needs to begin their own. And if this video brought value to your life, don't forget to share it with someone who needs it too. If it has reminded you that strength still lives within, then let this not be where we part ways. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe right now so that you can continue to receive stories, lessons, and inspirations that help build the life you deserve. Explore our other videos for more wisdom and more steps toward health, peace, and joy. Thank you for watching and for choosing to walk with us today. May your steps be steady, your heart be light, and your days filled with meaning. We wish you a new day blessed with peace, strength, and quiet happiness.